We have our nuclei suspension and are now ready to prepare our transposition mix.
First, we spin down the ATAC enzyme B and place on ice. Next, we have our ATAC buffer B, which is thawing at room temperature. We vortex, spin down briefly, and place back at room temperature. Next, we have our 20x nuclei buffer from the library kit. Thaw and dilute the nuclei buffer stock by a factor of 20 with nuclease-free water. Then vortex and spin down briefly. Nuclei should be prepared in this diluted nuclei buffer. Finally, we have our single nuclei suspension, which is kept on ice. Refer to the demonstrated protocols for isolating nuclei for ATAC sequencing. Adhering to this protocol is critical for optimal assay performance. If following a different nuclei isolation protocol, use the diluted nuclei buffer for final nuclei pellet suspension. The use of the tris-based diluted nuclei buffer for nuclei suspension is critical for optimal assay performance. The composition of the diluted nuclei buffer, including magnesium concentration, has been optimized for the transposition and barcoding steps. Suspension of nuclei in a different buffer may not be compatible with the downstream protocol steps.
We are now ready to prepare our transposition mix on ice. We will add the reagents in the order shown in the user guide.
First, we add ATAC buffer B. Next, we add ATAC enzyme B. We pipette mix 10 times and spin down briefly. Then aliquot 10 microliters of transposition mix per sample into a PCR strip tube on ice. Centrifuge briefly and maintain on ice. Refer to the nuclei concentration guidelines in the user guide to calculate the volume of nuclei stock and diluted nuclei buffer for a total volume of 5 microliters. Calculate volumes necessary first and proceed to making the transposition mix. Do not mix the nuclei stock and diluted nuclei buffer together until indicated in the user guide. For this experiment, our targeted nuclei recovery is 4,000 nuclei. Our nuclei stock concentration is 2,500 nuclei per microliter, and the recovery efficiency factor is 1.53. Using the equation from the user guide, we calculate the volume of the nuclei stock is 2.45 microliters. Therefore, the volume of diluted nuclei buffer is 5 microliters minus 2.45 microliters, which is 2.55 microliters.
We're now ready to add our buffer to the transposition mix on ice.
First, we add 2.55 microliters of diluted nuclei buffer. Pipette mix and spin down briefly. Next, we gently pipette mix the nuclei stock. Then we add 2.45 microliters of nuclei stock to the transposition mix. Gently pipette mix 6 times with the pipette set to 10 microliters. Do not centrifuge at this time. Incubate in a thermal cycler using the protocol from the user guide. Ensure the lid temperature is set to 50 degrees Celsius. If the lid is set to a higher temperature, cool it down to the recommended temperature of 50 degrees Celsius.
We've prepared our transposed nuclei suspension. Next, we're going to prepare our barcoding reaction and assemble the chip.